Autoimmune rehab is for you if you think you have an autoimmune condition, know you have one and are struggling, or just want to listen and learn all you can about how to heal from autoimmune conditions. Have you ever asked yourself any of these questions? Why won't medications heal my autoimmune condition? I've already given up gluten and dairy, but I still feel sick. My doctor said my labs are normal, but I still feel sick and tired a lot. Can you really heal from an autoimmune condition? What does it take to really thrive with autoimmune conditions? What role does stress play in autoimmune conditions? What is really the best diet for autoimmune? This is Anna Laura Brown, host of Autoimmune Rehab. I started this podcast because I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's in 2018 and wanted to inspire hope and transform health for people with autoimmune challenges. So keep listening and let's get you the help and hope you really need. Welcome, everybody. And for today's episode of Autoimmune Rehab, I am happy to welcome Sherry Imami, and we are going to be talking about a variety of different things. First and foremost, we're going to be talking about her journey to healing from fibromyalgia, as well as probably a few other things, talk about some of the different things that she did, talk about some patient advocacy, because anybody that is more than likely, if you're listening to this, you've become well aware over time, that if you weren't aware in the beginning, that you really have to advocate for yourself when you have an autoimmune condition, because it's not easy and a lot of doctors just don't know what they're talking about or just have a tendency to just not take you seriously. So welcome to the podcast, Sherry. Why don't you start off a little bit by telling us in about a minute or so, who are you and what brings you on to autoimmune rehab?
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks for having me. So I feel strongly about this podcast. Once again, my name is Sherry Imami, and I am a certified health coach, board certified holistic health practitioner, educator, guest speaker, and of course, award-winning author. And the reason what drew me to this podcast is because fibromyalgia is one of those illnesses that a lot of times crosses over with autoimmune. So you can get fibromyalgia and at the same time also have a thyroid condition or lupus or rheumatoid arthritis, so it kind of, they overlap and they carry a lot of similarities, but I feel like I need to come out here speak today exactly what it is so that people can know what to look for, what they should do, what are some ways so that they feel like in control of their health, and hopefully they'll get a lot out of this.
Yeah, that's good. That's good for sure. Yeah, because I have covered fibromyalgia one other time, but it was definitely from a little bit of a different angle. So,
Uh-huh.
there's always room to talk about. What I tell people is everybody's journey is different, even if they have the same diagnosis. You can have 20 people with the same diagnosis, journeys and everything are all different.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
nobody always has the same story. So start off by telling us a little bit, how did you originally get sick? What was the process like to get your diagnosis then after you first got sick back in the...
So yeah, so it's really interesting. In August 2014, that is when I got my board certification from the American Association of Drugless Practitioners. And then about a month later, the first symptom I started noticing is I woke up in the morning and I had pins and needles and kind of like a burning sensation on the top of my foot. So I kind of brushed it off as, all right, well, maybe it's a cold, maybe I have some inflammation or something like that. Then little by little, I started experiencing more brain fog, digestive issues like irritable bowel syndrome, muscle fatigue. And I went to speak to a dear friend of mine, and she was like, okay, well, do you want to test for lupus? Do you want to test for, I was like, well, I don't go outside, so it can't be Lyme disease. There's no bullseye. There's no rash. There's nothing there. There's no, usually with lupus, you get like a butterfly rash there. There was nothing there. But the one thing that I thought maybe it could be was some type of like arthritic condition or some type of like undiagnosed, rare autoimmune condition. So I started getting more symptoms. Definitely I had difficulty with my monthly cycles. I would get just excruciating pain. It was definitely abnormal enough to where you're like, oh, something's not right here, And in the back of my mind, when you have these symptoms that aren't really so obvious, um, it's always scary because you want the answers. You sometimes you think it's the worst possible thing ever. You try to like talk to different people, see, well, what do you think it is? And so The first thing I did before I actually went to see a primary care physician is and this is optional. I went and ordered my own blood work, and I was able to do that because I had a board certification. I got it through third party, and I did it through a reputable lab, Quest Diagnostics. Um, and I looked for, and I talk about this in the presentation. I looked for any kind of like thyroid issue, antibodies issues. Um, there's one thing called the sedimation rate, which is when it's like really, really high and it's like a marker for inflammation. There's another one called, I'm sure you're familiar with it, C-reactive protein. You heard of that
Yeah.
CRP?
Mhm.
Yeah. That was another thing too that I tested. For the most part, all my blood work came back normal. So then I was like, oh, okay, all right. On one end, I was grateful, but then on I was like, also like, okay, well, if that's not it, then what could it be? So I made an appointment with my primary care physician, and I explained to her where it hurt. She asked me, where does it hurt? And it was about like maybe 11 or 12 different places, and I explained like, the back of my neck and my head and all over. And she said, okay, well, I'm like 99% sure you have fibromyalgia. And I started breaking down into tears. Um, because I didn't know it's so I was bedridden for a long time. It's so debilitating, and because it's invisible and people don't quite understand it or what causes it. Um, that's where it got really frustrating because, taking medication's an optional thing. She's like, let's try, I'll support you any way you can. Let's just figure out what works for you. And I went through a lot of different medications, and some I just liked, sometimes I didn't. Um, so I kind of, like you said before, everyone's story is personal. The best way I can kind of like what I can take from this, or the best advice or any kind of words of wisdom, is everybody's different. Like you had mentioned before, everybody's body's different. What works, if your friend has fibromyalgia, what medication works for her might be different than what works for you. And I think like we gather so many different feedback from other people, which is great. And I went to group therapy, and I got all this help, all the support from people living from chronic illness. But I realized at the end of the day, you kind of have to go, like you have to do trial and error and kind of go with what's working for you. So little by little, I tried a whole bunch of different things, from supplements to diet to TENS therapy to acupuncture, a whole bunch of different methods. Little by little, through making those, it wasn't like a drastic shift. It was gradual steps, gradual steps, gradual steps, and talking to about like 5 different naturopaths. I mean, a lot of different specialists. I just tried what I could find, and then I did a lot of research, and then I think it was like 2016, so it was only like 2 years that I had it, the pain started going away, and then I was completely in full remission, and it hasn't flared up since.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Sure, you're
yeah,
lucky that you got that diagnosis right away
yeah,
too, because a lot of
yeah.
doctors just kind of brush people off and
Mhm.
whatever. And so you must have had a really good doctor that you were able to get that diagnosis.
Yeah, and I also want to mention, and I mentioned this book. So with fibromyalgia, it is a lifelong condition, but so there's not really like a cure. But what happens is when it goes in remission or remains dormant, it could be that you don't get symptoms for 30 years. It's still there, but you may be totally fine. You may be totally okay. The symptoms may never come back, but the makeup is still there. So it's not like the same way as a common cold where it completely flushes out of the system, but you can be pain free for X number of years, and you'll be fine. So it's not like once you get diagnosed, because I've talked to so many different people that have this disorder, they feel so hopeless. Like, this is it. This is my life. I have to go on disability, and this is the way that it is. And you feel hopeless. And I know that feeling too, because I was very depressed and sad, and I was just like bedridden. The pain is different than bone pain, arthritic pain. It's a combination of like muscular pain and then a burning sensation all over. So if you could picture like your muscles feeling like they're on fire, that's what it would feel like when you have fibromyalgia. And there's also like a kind of a crunchy, crackly feeling going on with your muscles. It's a little bit hard to explain, but you are very sensitive to everything. You're sensitive to movement, you're sensitive. It's completely life changing. You go one day from being like totally active, the next you're like, what's going on? To where like lifting your hand up hurts, or like walking is, I walked today. I made it to the bathroom, you know what I mean? Like going from one day and then the next day something completely different, and there's no known cause, and you're like, okay, I don't understand what happened. So So in my book, it's a combination of emotional and physical um, aspects to it that causes it. And you will see that on my presentation. I talk a lot about some of the emotional issues that can, cause this. Sometimes it's also physical trauma, like if you have an accident or something like that. Years later, you could develop fibromyalgia. Or if you had some type of traumatic event that affected your limbic system, which is like the emotional part of the brain, that can trigger something in the amygdala called substance P. So with fibromyalgia, the substance P is really high. So when you have trauma, the amygdala gets activated and then it increases substance P. So that's another issue that could, happen. So I mean that's it. So what else would you
That's
like to ask?
crazy. Yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah, I know there's a lot of things that obviously go into fibromyalgia, a lot of different
mhm,
things that go into a lot of different autoimmune disorders. So I'm just
mhm,
curious, you mentioned that you already had your health coaching certification, you already had your drugless practitioner certification even
mhm.
when you got your fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
What kind of a lifestyle and what was going on in your life at that time? Did you have any kind of like emotional pain or trauma going on, or and what was your diet like? What were things going
Yeah. So everything was fine. I was feeling fine. I guess like, it's weird because it could have been my mom had it and she was fine. And when I went to different naturopaths, they did like a urine test and they found that I was high in cortisol, and there's this gene expression that I had, and I talk about that, of course, in my lecture. And it's basically you don't process folate. You have high homocysteine levels, and you don't process folate. And there's definitely a correlation between that and getting other conditions, and fibromyalgia is one of them. So there was definitely a genetic component to it, but then there was also like you said, some other trauma that I talk about in chapter 3 that kind of, even though it happened years ago, that kind of could have escalated and caused that. I also did get in a car accident in 2009, which I talk about that in the book. I was always, like you said, I had my health coach. I was getting all, getting ready, getting all healthy and stuff. And then that happened. The first thing I thought was it was a huge setback for me. Like imagine being like really active and then just like being like stuck in a chair or stuck in, you know what I mean, not being able to move or do anything. It was very hard for me. There was no specific like diet issues that could have caused it. For some people, there are some foods that can cause inflammation that could make you prone to fibromyalgia. But in my case, there wasn't like anything really specific. It was a combination of different things that caused it. But what helped were more the natural methods. Because
Okay, awesome, for
yeah.
sure, yeah, the natural methods I feel like are always the way to go with pretty much every kind of
Mhm,
pain and autoimmune,
mhm,
and the book that she's talking about, we probably should mention that, and we'll have it linked below, is her Breaking Free from Pain book. You can get on Amazon, and she was telling me before we started recording that it's actually also kind of a journal as well. So if you are somebody that's struggling with a lot of pain or fibromyalgia, I mean, even if it's not fibromyalgia, even if you have pain from other autoimmune conditions or whatever, you want to check out her book. And it is something you're going to want to get the physical copy of, like we were just saying, because it is kind of like a journal. There's things to write in, things to do, all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, she shares more about her story and some of that kind of stuff in your book.
mhm.
So, people that really want to delve in deep will want to go check out your book. So, what would you say, looking back on your own experience with fibromyalgia, if somebody is, really in that flare up stage, shall we say, or they just barely got diagnosed, what would you say is one of the very first things that somebody should do based on your own experience with fibromyalgia?
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned about the interactive journal because in one of the chapters, I give an emotions exercise. There's a couple of pages where you can fill it out. And I talk about you put a name on the emotion and you draw it. The reason why I say this is anytime you have chronic pain, whether it's MS, you know,
Mhm.
thyroid disease, anything that causes physical pain and even emotional, there's something called radical acceptance, and that's what you learn in dialectical behavioral therapy. And it changes your attitude from woe is me to radical acceptance, accepting the moment, and then you like release it and you feel at peace. And I think that's the most powerful thing is to be at peace with what, doesn't mean like, it's not a lifelong sentence. So that's the good part, it's not going to shorten your lifespan, it's not, but you're going to be in pain. So you have to kind of like accept that. But then again, that doesn't mean that you're going to be in pain your whole life. There's still things that you can do. So it's not like, that's the end all be all. So the best thing I would say is to take some time out and to sit with the pain and kind of like allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. If you feel bad, that's okay. Don't, if whether you have kids or a job, don't like disregard your pain. Allow yourself to feel the actual emotional aspects or the depression that's going to happen when you start getting chronic pain. So you have to sit in with that. The other thing too is make an appointment with your primary care physician, explain the symptoms, and have them refer you to like either a rheumatologist or a dietitian, or if you want to try more of a naturopath, try those. Those are great. So there's a lot of different options that you could try: massage therapy, acupuncture, acupressure, diet interventions. I'm really big on anti-inflammatory foods. That's like salmon, leafy greens, a lot of nuts, berries, turmeric, definitely fatty fish. Any type of fatty fish is good. Rice, anything like that would really help you feel better. And for exercise, do something every day. If you can only do 5 minutes a day, that's good. 5 minutes walking, then 10 minutes walking, then 20 minutes walking, and celebrate your small wins and stretch and use the water. If you have access to like a YMCA, take those, I was gonna say water aerobics, maybe one of the best things you could do, because you're in the water, you're not putting stress on the joints, and you're not gonna feel as much pain because the water kind of has like a buoyancy to it. So you're gonna be getting a cardio and toning in, but you're gonna be gentle on all of your system, like all your muscles. And that's what you need versus like, I don't know, doing like squats and that, typical kind of workouts that people do. You need to just do gentle movements, Pilates, yoga, anything like that's going to really help. And mindfulness, staying in the moment. I think that helps too, because you're going to be feeling all kinds of pain. Oh, and also like support, group therapy. I joined a lot of support groups, and that helps too, because you need to feel like you're not the only one, that you're not alone in this. You need to talk to people that feel like they're in chronic pain or that are in similar situations as you. And I think if you use all those different methods, then you should be fine. Your future will look bright, but you have to kind of take action and try different things. You can't just like try medication and then give up. You kind of have to try what works for you and be proactive.
That's good. That's awesome. Yeah. So a couple things come to mind. Obviously, I mean, I'm sorry you had to go through this in a way, but in a way I'm not sorry, because as a health coach, I'm sure this probably has really helped you to have been through this, because
Yeah.
you actually are better able to sympathize with other people and help
Yeah.
other people because of what you've been through.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, like it's natural when people have unfortunate things happen to them, but what we have to understand is nobody, we're all comprised of like cells. No body's perfect. Eventually something will happen just because of science and the way that we're made. So, you have so many years on this planet, but you can eat right, exercise as you can, but sometimes things will happen. Things go haywire in the body. Sometimes, you know, even like people that get cancer and it's just so unexpected. Sometimes cells multiply. Sometimes it's something as simple as environmental toxins. So there's some things that you have control of, some things you don't. So I think when you understand that, then you're kind of like, okay, well, I'm just a person like anyone else. This could happen. It's not, no one's really like, I don't want to say like immune to illness. We have so much stuff in the air, so many, there's germs everywhere. I mean, you're bound to get something. There's no way you can be immune to not having some kind of health issue. So,
Yeah, that's a good point for sure. I mean, we're all going to have health challenges at some point, but it's
yeah,
just how you deal with it, how you move on, and like you
yeah,
said, learn how to thrive and not just
hmm
survive with it, and realize that yeah, this may be part of your life, but it doesn't have to rule your life. It doesn't have to
hmm
control your life.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, good, thriving, healthy person who's able to
Mhm.
do a lot of the things you want to do despite of your health issues. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, when you mentioned going to like group therapy or like, like support groups and things, how did you find one that you felt like was actually a support? Because I've talked to some other people that have been through, different autoimmune conditions, like especially a friend that I have that I interviewed who put her lupus into remission, who said that the problem with a
Huh.
lot of these support groups is that the only people that were there all just wanted to complain about their problems and they didn't want to actually do anything to fix them. So how
Oh,
did you
okay. Yeah, I got.
find one where people are actually there to actually
Right.
support you and actually still want to actually change their life and actually want to heal and not just
Yeah.
complain about their problems?
So I found support groups through so through my church. They had it's kind of like somebody else would facilitate the group, but it would attract different people. So they'd had like an arthritis support group, then they had a chronic pain support group. So I tried like the chronic pain support group, actually physically went there. And then they had a couple like Zoom groups. This of course was before COVID. So, there were more groups, like actually interactive physical groups, rather than now everyone does everything through Zoom or Google Meets. So I reached out to local community, like church was one, and then I think there was I believe we have a hospital here where they kind of do it's either through a nurse or they'll have like someone, like a practitioner that's outside of the hospital, that will facilitate the whole entire group, or maybe somebody that has the illness that already kind of knows what you feel like. So that was nice because people would feel pain, and yeah, you're right, they would complain. Of course you're going to complain. That's part of it. You're going to feel like that. But there were others that had positive stories too, like, oh, have you tried this, or maybe this would work, or you know, there's a great I think his name is Chris Kressner, and I think he wrote a book called, either he wrote a book called The Wheat Belly, but I know Chris Kressner does a lot of like naturopathic type of topics. And I found that the naturopathics tend to be a little more positive in terms of chronic illness, so that it's not like this is the end all be all. You have to be on medication for the rest of your life. I feel like they're kind of more open minded to like some other possibilities. So I feel like that's important. And going back to like you said, circling back around group therapy, church was great for me. But people that say like don't go to church, some kind of community organization, I think would be good. um so that way you can interact with other people, and you're going to find people that have had some good stories and some bad stories. So it's not like everything's going to be doom and gloom. You're going to find kind of a mixed bag.
That's good. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing from that too to take away is to try multiple options.
Hmm.
Don't just go to one support group. And if
Yeah.
everybody there is all doom and gloom,
Hmm.
then don't go to that one again, find
Exactly.
another one.
Exactly. And what's great about, now that everything's kind of shifting towards online, is there's just numerous support groups. You don't have to be like back in the day, you really had only like Glendale, Pasadena, you had just like a few if you wanted to stay local, you didn't want to travel out so far out. But now with, Zoom and everything, um, there's so many support groups. You can get so much feedback, so much information. And it's not even just online or in person. There's also online forums too. That helps a lot. When you can just talk to different people on the message boards, like what worked for you, or, that kind of thing. That helps a lot for me, at least. I think that that'll help people if they don't want to, like, for whatever reason, they don't want to show up. They just want to like find out information. I think that's a good way to do it too.
That's awesome for sure.
Mhm.
So I know one of the people that you said that really had an impact on you and that you talk about in the book was Dr. Paul Eck. Let's talk a little bit about what his work is or does or did rather, because I know he's passed away now, but
Mhm.
how that helped transform you in your journey to healing from fibromyalgia a little bit.
Well, I talk about it in chapter 2, and the reason why I used his research is when I became board certified as a holistic health practitioner, I was under, not really under contract, but I was given the option to perform hair mineral analysis testing, which is kind of like a standard gold treatment in alternative medicine that can look at mineral imbalances in the body that can give you like other clues as to what could be going on in your system. So Dr. Pollack was the founder of that form of testing. And he was born in like 1929 and he passed away in 1996. But he found analytical research labs in 1974. So he was kind of like the first person to really discover hormonal analysis. And people don't really give him enough credit. Like when people think of integrative medicine, they think of like Andrew Weil. He's like a big, well-known guy. Or there's Lawrence, I think his name's Wilson. So Dr. Pollack was like way before that. And he's, like I said, he's a biochemist. He's a physician. He has, he even has like a background in psychology. He has a really, really good technique of kind of looking at the body as a whole. So, we talk about mind, body, spirit, but he looks at diseases like you got to get to the cellular level. Not just we have to look at the disease, we have to look at all the different cells and kind of like not replenish, but we have to kind of look in from the inside and look at our diet, look at, the toxins that we're exposed to, drink enough water and really heal the body from the inside out. So the hair mineral analysis testing, what's nice about that and why it's, and it's one of those things where like it's popular in alternative medicine, but then there are some medical doctors that don't like it because maybe they oppose to alternative medicine as a whole, but why it's valuable is because when you get blood work drawn, you're getting the results of your immediate, like the way your body is at that moment. What's nice about the hormonal analysis testing is it can go back 3 to 4 months of looking at what's going on in your system. So they take like a snippet of your hair, it has to be clean, and they you mark off symptoms, they send it to a lab, they run it through, and you get like the results back. They look at like usually they talk about you'll get like calcium, potassium, copper. You'll get like all the different minerals, trace elements. You even get toxic metals like mercury. You get to look at all those different levels. And when you're looking at that, you can kind of assess, okay, I'm high in this, I'm low in that. So then you can kind of figure out from there, all right, this points me in maybe I've got a thyroid issue, or maybe, I'm not getting enough this. So with fibromyalgia, a lot of times you're getting you have like low magnesium. Magnesium is important for muscle health. And when you're low on magnesium, you get like muscle cramps and sometimes like restless leg syndrome. So this is a nice way to kind of look at the system as a whole to, further investigate, because blood work isn't going to, catch everything. And usually when you go to a doctor, they're not really looking at your vitamin levels unless you say, I want to test for vitamin B12 or vitamin D. They're, for the most part, not going to really order anything unless they have a reason to. But if you're curious, you want, you're like, I want more answers, I need to know what's going on. The hair mineral analysis testing is great because that gives you kind of like a blueprint on what could be going on. And not just for fibromyalgia, but it's also good for a lot of other issues. And Dr. Pollack is really big on nutritional therapy. So he was the founding father of this form of testing. And then he opened up analytical research labs, which was in Arizona. And his method was, okay, so now we've got, we have to kind of like rebalance the system. We have to take the right vitamins, minerals, replenish it with our food. There's also something called slow oxidizers, fast oxidizers, which I do talk about in the book. Usually people with fibromyalgia are more prone to being a slow oxidizer. So I credit Dr. Pollack because not just because he was, the founder of Analytical Research Labs, but also because I was able to speak to his son. And I said, I reached out to him. I'd like to, dedicate this to your father. And what do you think about that? And he's like, okay, this is great. I like that. And I personally felt strongly about this because I feel like a lot of people don't know about him, or he's known, but like, he's not as well known as like Andrew Weil. And I feel like people need to know more about him. They need to educate themselves about this. And he is an important figure in alternative medicine, so that's why I talk about him.
That's good for sure. Yeah, I actually interviewed another lady. That episode came out a couple months ago about details about hair mineral analysis, and I
Okay.
actually tried it myself actually. And I have to say,
Oh.
if you are interested in it, or well, anybody that's really listening to this, if you haven't taken a serious look at that, especially if you feel like you're one of those people that's been there, done that, and tried a lot of things, or you do feel like you are not sure what kinds of minerals and vitamins you're missing,
Hmm.
that is one of the big key things because I definitely got some big aha moments out of doing it. So yeah,
Okay.
I definitely say try it, you know.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. When I did like the urine testing for hormones, I was because my homocysteine levels were really high, I was low on folate, so I had to take it's like a form of methylfolate, and that helped a lot too. But yes, it's important to know like your vitamin levels, because low vitamin D can cause depression, it can cause all types of issues going on with the system. The same thing as like super high calcium can cause um, hyperparathyroidism, which oftentimes people with fibromyalgia can get that. So there's a lot of different things you have to look at. I'm not too big on supplements. I feel like you need to have a balance. You should get all your
Mhm.
vitamins through food, but usually the way like our diet is, especially like American standard American diet, we don't get enough minerals. So I feel like we need to eat more of the nutritious foods. We need to focus on eating more of that good quality foods and eating more often. Like
Yeah,
not going too many hours being hungry, but eat, because you want to stabilize your blood sugar, and you want to look at food as like fuel. Like you want to make nutritious food, make it taste good, but look at it as like your car, or you got to get you got to get, the juice, the oil, whatever in your system. So you got to get, the fatty fish, you got to get enough fruits and vegetables. That's really important. Stay away from processed foods. I feel like, we have too many restaurants, too many, things. We have access to processed foods. One thing I know, and I completely stopped eating fast food, is when I ate fast food, they put something in it where you're never really satisfied. You're
Mhm.
never full. Like you're always hungry. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. This has so many calories. This is because it has no nutritional value. So you're having like empty calories. So of course your body's going to feel empty, like you need something else. And sometimes we want to search, okay, what else on the menu can I get? It's not like so I feel like when we eat more of the nutritious foods, we'll never be hungry. You'll never be hungry. You'll always have energy. And for women, especially after a certain age, focus more on protein, like good quality protein, lean protein. Um, we definitely need to eat more vegetables. That's very important, more fruits and vegetables. Grains are important. That definitely doesn't mean like processed carbs, but you want to, you need healthy carbs too. Healthy fats, that's important. We don't get enough fat. That's from like avocados or olive oil. Um, Green tea, anything that's anti-inflammatory is good too. So that's
for
the best
sure.
I can
Yeah,
think.
absolutely. And I think the other thing with the supplements too is a lot of us get into taking too much stuff, and sometimes it can be kind of random, and we just like start swallowing all these pills, and we don't actually know what we actually need. And so,
Yeah.
actually testing to find out what you actually need
Hmm.
is pretty important.
You're right. Actually, yeah, because it's not, well, one, it's not FDA regulated, so that's true. So people get tricked into thinking this is going to be, um, there are some supplements that really help, but you need to first definitely check with your doctor, see, what they say. But you need to also a lot of times understand that, like you said, if you overload your stuff with too many vitamins, or you end up doing too much vitamin D, it actually can cause a lot of harm. So you want to really get those levels checked to figure out what is it I'm lacking, what is it, like I was low on vitamin D, I had no idea, you know, and then I found out like it's not wise for me to go out in the sun either, because I'm prone to possibly getting skin cancer. So I had to kind of know, like, okay, well, so how do I get but for some people, it might be just like, eating more eggs or more leafy greens. It has a lot of good vitamins in it. But if we focus on changing our diet, then there's a lot we can do though. So we don't have to, take so many supplements and vitamins and go overboard, because yes, you can get interactions and they're not always safe either. So people need to understand that. And they're not FDA regulated. So
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Good points. Okay. So, like she mentioned, she has a YouTube video that we will link that has a lecture. We'll also link the book that actually is also a journal. So, like I said, you're going to want to actually buy the physical copy so that you can write in it, do some of those emotional exercises, some of that kind of stuff. We'll also link your Instagram below too so people can connect with you on Instagram. And then if they want to reach out and get a free consultation, they can email you. So, we'll have your email in there. And anything else that you didn't share that I didn't ask about that you want to cover before
don't
we're done?
forget to shop when you send the link to the link that I sent you to Mountain Rose
Oh
Herbs.
yeah,
So, yeah.
Mountain Rose Herbs.
And
We'll
then
put that in
reach out
there.
to me. I can give you a great list of recommendations. Reach out to me with what's going on, your concerns, and I can give you some ideas. There are so many great products out there. It's not just essential oils, it's got herbs, teas, a lot of different nice natural products. So I recommend checking that out.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, we'll link that below too as well. And yeah, so don't hesitate to reach out to her if you need anything. And yeah, just check out the links. And as always, make sure you share this episode with anybody else that you feel like could benefit. And thanks for listening. And thanks for coming on, Sherry. And have a
Dude,
great rest of your day, everybody.
my pleasure. Yeah, take care. Take care of yourself. Okay, bye.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Autoimmune Rehab. If you found it helpful, I'd like to encourage you to please reach out to at least one person in your life that you know could benefit and share this episode with them and invite them to subscribe and continue learning all about how they too can benefit from the words of wisdom and the different stories and things to help people improve their lives with autoimmune conditions and help you achieve true healing. I'd also appreciate any feedback you have, as well as if you leave me a review or rating on either Apple Podcasts or in the Spotify app. And want to take things to the next level? My podcast is sponsored by my brand new online community and training where we get together for weekly office hours, monthly trainings and support, as well as worksheets, different things like that to help you improve even more on your journey to autoimmune healing. It's called the Essential Wellness Circle, and I'd love to have you join me inside the circle. You'll find the link in the show notes this podcast, but it's at essentialwellnesscircle.com. I do hope you'll check out this community and the details about what it takes to join. It's a little bit of a different kind of a community, but I'd really love to have you join. And again, thanks for listening to Autoimmune Rehab.